Hey, seventh graders, welcome to 6.6, which is the last section in our chapter about percents. Today we're going to be discussing simple interest. For our learning target, we have I can use the simple interest formula to solve problems. And the simple interest formula will be in our key idea that we'll talk about here in just a moment. First, let's talk about a couple of these definitions and what they mean. So for our vocabulary today, the first vocab word is interest. And it says interest is money paid or earned for using or lending money. So I kind of like to think about interest in a couple different ways. Like there's good interest. And an example of good interest would be like if I put money into the bank, like into a savings account, for example, what I'm actually doing is I'm allowing the bank to use my money. I'm putting my money in their bank so that they can lend it out to other people. So the bank actually pays me a percentage. Now, usually for a savings account, it's a really low percent interest rate, but I'm actually earning money for putting money into the bank. And that's an example of good interest because it's making me money. Now, you could say opposite of that is bad interest, and that's when like you have to pay money. For an example would be a loan. Okay, so when I bought my truck, I didn't have all the money right away. I couldn't just pay cash for it, so I had to take out a loan. Since I was the one borrowing money, then I had to pay the bank a percentage, right? I pay a percentage to the bank for allowing them, or for them allowing me to borrow money from them. Okay, so sometimes interest makes you money, and sometimes you have to pay interest, like for a loan, for example. Those two things will be a lot more evident once you start after taking loans out for borrowing money. Then the other vocab word that we have is principal. And this isn't the principal like the principal of a school. This is the case where it's an amount of money that you borrowed or deposited. So, for example, if I took out a loan for, let's just say a truck is $20,000, my principal would be $20,000. Or if I put $5,000 into a savings, my principal is $5,000. It's what I start out with, essentially, how much I put in a bank account or how much I take out a loan for, kind of what I start with. Okay, so how can we use those two things with the simple interest formula then? Well, simple interest is the money paid or earned on the principal. So we're looking for interest, or its simple interest is abbreviated I in this case. To find your interest, you take your principal, which is the money you start with, and you multiply that by your rate. R is the interest rate. That's what R stands for, is the rate. And notice it says in decimal form. So principal times rate times time, and our time is in years. Okay, so when we want to find interest, we take our principal times our rate times our time, and that'll tell you how much you earn in simple interest. One last little blip here. It says an interest rate per year is also called an annual interest rate. Annual means per year. Okay. All right. Let's try an example to see if we can find our interest rate here, or our simple interest. It says you deposit $500 in a savings account. The account earns 3% simple interest per year. What is the balance after 3 years? All right, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write down my simple interest formula. Interest equals principal times rate times time. Okay. So, do I know my principal? Do I know how much I started off with? Well, yeah, I deposited $500 into this account. Times my rate, 3%. And remember, what do we want this in? Decimal form. So 3%, move it 2 to the left, would be 0.03. Okay. And then I also need to multiply that by my time, and it wants to know the balance after 3 years. Okay, so little plug and chug in the calculator here. It is okay as long as you're showing work if you use a calculator. So 500 times 0.03 times 3 gives me $45. So the interest that I've earned after 3 years for putting $500 into a savings account that earns 3% interest is $45. But be careful, because the question asks for the balance. So the balance would be the total. So if I put in $500 to start with and I made $45 interest, I would add those two together to come up with a total of $545 after 3 years would be my balance. So you can kind of see that opening up a savings account or any type of account with the bank that earns you interest is a great idea, because you made $45 after 3 years for essentially doing nothing. You just put money into an account. Okay? And I bet you can guess, but the more money that you can put in, the more money you're going to make. Okay? It's a good idea to open up a savings account early. Also, it's for that same reason, it's a good idea to open a retirement account early. If you start a retirement account at age 20, you're going to have a lot more into it just based on interest by the time you're ready to retire than if you start at age 30 or 40. All right, let's pause here to try the try it problem here on your own. Okay, hopefully you had a chance to do that. It says the balance of the account after 9 months. Okay, so my principal is still $500 plus, times my rate. It's still 3%, so 0.03 times. Now, instead of 3 for time, it says 9 months. Okay, and remember, the time needs to be in years. So let me ask you this. 9 months is how much of a year? Well, 9 months out of the total of 12 months in a year is the same as, if I simplified this, it would be 3/4. Divide top and bottom by 3. So 3/4 of a year is 9 months. So times by 3/4, or I can think of 3/4 as 0.75. Those would be the same exact thing. Do a little plugging and chugging in my calculator here. 500 times 0.03 times 0.75 gives me $11.25. And remember to ask for the balance. So I need to add the original principal to come up with a total of $511.25. If you have more questions on that, please let me know. Let's next move on to example 2, where now instead of finding the balance or an interest rate or simple interest, we're looking to find the interest rate. Okay, so now we know it says you deposit $1,000 into an account and it earns $100 in simple interest. So this time we know our I in our formula. In 4 years, what is the annual interest rate? Okay, rate would be the keyword there. We're going to be looking for R. So interest equals principal times rate times time. We know how much we earn in simple interest. It tells us $100. We know the principal. We start out with $1,000 in our account. Times, we're looking for what our interest rate was, so I'm just going to leave it as R, times, I know the amount of years is 4 years. Okay. So now this turns into an equation where we know 3 out of the 4 pieces of our puzzle. On the right-hand side of my equation, I have a couple of like terms. I can take 1,000 and I can multiply that by 4. So if I simplify this, I would get 100 equals, I didn't do anything to the left-hand side. 1,000 times 4 is 4,000. And times R is, well, that's just 4,000 R. I'm looking to solve for R. Right now, R is being multiplied by 4,000. To undo that, I would divide by 4,000 on both sides of my equation. That would leave me with R being all alone, which is what I wanted. And then it's just a little bit of division. 100 divided by 4,000. And that totals 0.025. 0.025. And then, remember, if I want to write my interest rate as a percentage, move it 2 spots to the right. So that would give me 2.5% for my annual interest rate. Okay, go ahead and pause the video here and try a problem just like that for number 2. Okay, again, I equals PRT. We know the principal is 350. We know the interest we earned is 1750. I'm looking for my rate, and I know my time is 2.5 years. Okay, so a little math here. 1750 equals, okay, I need to do 350 times 2.5 to simplify. 350 times 2.5 would give me 875. So 875 times R. And then I just need to divide by 875 on both sides. And R will equal 1750 divided by 875 gives me a total of 0.02. And if I move my decimal 2 spots, that gives me 2%. Okay, if you have questions on that one, please let me know and I'll be glad to help you out. Last example here. Oh, actually we got 2 more. Example 3 says, now we're trying to find an amount of time. So a bank offers 3 savings accounts. The simple annual interest rate is determined by the principal. How long does it take an account with a principal of $800 to earn $100 in interest? So basically, looking at this diagram, what it's saying is, if you put more money into an account, the bank will give you a better interest rate. So if you put more than $5,000 into an account, you can get a 3% interest rate. But if you only put in $500 to $5,000, you only get 2%. And here's the lowest percentage rate. If you put in less than $500 into a savings account, you only get a 1.5% interest rate. So it says, how long does it take an account with a principal of $800? Okay, so if we put in $800, which one of these interest rates would we get? Well, 800 falls into this category of more than 500 and less than 5,000. So we're going to be using this interest rate we're going to get the 2% interest rate. Okay, so interest is equal to percent times rate times time. I know that my interest rate, it says, how long does it take an account with a principal of $800 to earn $100 in interest? So I know my interest, I need it to be $100. I know my principal, I start off with $800. I also know my rate is 2%, which is the same as 0.02. And I'm looking for how long it takes. So I'm looking for my time. So very similar to before, I can simplify here, and then I can divide that on both sides to find my time. So let's try that out. 0.02 I already have from my last problem, times 800 gives me 16. So that this would simplify to 100 equals 16 times t. And then I just need to divide by 16 on both sides. And 100 divided by 16 would give me 6.25. So 6.25. And remember, that's in years when I'm dealing with time. So what that's saying is if I put $800 into a savings account that earned 2% interest, it would take me 6.25 years to make $100 on interest. Okay, very similar to this problem. Go ahead and try it. For example 3, please pause the video now. For time's sake, I'm just going to give you guys the answer here. You should come up with 2.5 years, but I should see your work on your skeleton notes. Okay, so make sure that you've taken the time and you've worked out this problem. It's good practice. And we'll finish with the last example here for the real life, or the modeling real life example. It says that you borrow $600 to buy a violin. The simple annual interest rate is 15%. You pay off the loan after 2 years of equal monthly payments. How much is each payment? Okay, so this one will be a couple of different steps that we have to take. I'm going to start it just like I started my other problems, where I'm going to write down my interest rate formula. Okay, so what do I know? Well, I know I borrowed $600, so that's going to be my principal. That's what I start with. I know my interest rate is 15%. That's kind of a big percent. So 15% as a decimal is 0.15. I also know my time is 2 years. So times my time. Let's see how much total interest I need to pay. Okay, got 600 times the 0.15 times 2 to give me $180. So that means after 2 years, I've paid $180 for interest, right? This is the interest. So let me ask you, if I had to pay $180 in interest plus the $600 to buy the violin for my original, how much money did it actually cost me? Well, the $600 for the loan plus the interest that I had to pay totals $780 that I actually paid for the loan. Because I paid this originally, or I took this out, and then I had to pay this interest rate as well. The question asks, you pay off the loan after 2 years of equal monthly payments, and how much is each payment? Well, if I paid it off in monthly payments, how many months did I make payments for? Well, In 1 year, there's 12 months. So in 2 years, that would be, I made 24 payments each month. So if I know my total for the loan and I divide that by the 24 months that I had to pay, each month I paid, okay, plus 600. What's that? 780 divided by the 24 months. 32 and a half. So each payment was $32.50. And that's actually not so bad, because if you don't have $600 just sitting around to be able to afford this violin, what you could do is you could take out a loan, and each month now you can afford maybe this $32.50 payment rather than having to pay $600 right away. Granted, if you had the $600 in cash, you wouldn't have to pay an extra $180 in this interest over the course of 2 years. But a lot of people don't have that amount of money just sitting around. So you pay the smaller amount of interest and divide it by your total amount of time that you paid it for to equal the smaller monthly payment. Okay. So that does it for simple interest. Hopefully you have a little bit better understanding. Again, this will also be very applicable in real life in a very short amount of time when you start opening bank accounts and start taking out some loans. Thanks for checking this one out. I'll see you guys later.